Hey, this is Malika of Evanston Live TV, and I have with me returning guest. She's been on actually quite a few times. I love returning guests back onto the show. I love it, love it, love it. Please welcome back mayoral candidate Lori Keenan. Welcome,
Thanks,
Lori.
Malika. Thank you. Nice to be a returning guest.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. You know, the door is always open. The door is always open. And you always have a message. You
Yes.
always have a message. I love it that you let me know, okay, everyone, let's stay muted. I love it that you are always letting me know, what's going on in the city. And you're like, okay, did you know this was going on? And you're always on this crusade, this fight for the people. I love it. Love it,
Thanks.
love it.
Well, I love what you do too, sharing your information. I think it's a real service to the community. So, and you were just awarded that. So thanks for all that you do too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we just had the mayoral debate
Right.
recently. And yeah, that caught fire, caught a lot of attention
Yeah.
in the city. Because up until then, you all were kind of just, stating your platform, being very nice and polite. But then the debate came, and I was like, oh, okay. I learned something new about each one of you that night. That night. So the first thing that came up was the city budget. Everybody is up in arms about the city budget, except for the council. I think they're all pleased with how things are going, but
Sure. Why
people,
not, right?
Yeah, why not, right?
Raising the taxes on the people, great.
During a pandemic, yes, yes, yes.
They seem to think that's just fine.
Yes, yeah. Well, not all of them. I know.
That's true.
Yeah, Alderman Suffredin, he was like, look, we're in a pandemic. The budget cannot look the same as it always has. We can't raise taxes on people during a pandemic.
And I think Alderman Fleming too.
And Alderman Fleming,
right.
yes.
Right.
So you had gotten pretty passionate about the city budget. So you want to do a recap as everyone is heading out to early voting?
Sure.
So they get more of an idea of where does Lori stand with the budget?
Well, the budget is like a living document, and every year the citizens are allowed to speak about budget. It's put out for review, and then it's like a citizens budget hearing. And so anyone who lives in Evanston can come and speak to anything that they like, don't like, ideas, whatever. And I've done that for almost the 22 years that I've lived in town, just because I think that we should be prioritizing the people who live here and the programs that are really servicing those people. So this budget cycle was no different. I think there were a number of people who spoke about various issues, and I spoke also about the budget. I think that we are spending tens of millions of dollars more than other communities that are sort of analog communities to Evanston. So I spoke to that. I also think that I've seen, we were replacing vehicles that were 2017 vehicles. And I likened that to asking your friends and family to pay for your bills while you went out and bought a new car. If we can't afford it, it might be time to tighten the purse strings and sharpen our pencils, and maybe we go without those vehicles this year. So those are some of the things that I spoke to in this budget. But I think every year there are things that the city prioritizes that don't put the people of Evanston first. And I think that we really need to be looking at livability and affordability, because what's happening is we're pricing people out of town. And while Evanston sort of talks a good game about prizing its diversity, we're not walking the talk when we're raising taxes on people that have literally been here generations and are being priced out of town. And with that, not just our ethnic diversity, but also our socioeconomic diversity. Teachers and firemen and people who make a living wage we want that diversity in our community too. We want young families to be able to be here. We don't just want, a bunch of old people in big empty houses. So some of those things I think are important and should really be taken into consideration. And I feel like the aldermen, when they pass a budget at a time, during a pandemic, when people are losing jobs and homes and even family members, just even symbolically, I felt like they should have just kept the budget where it was, even as a gesture, even if they had to make, severe cuts elsewhere. So I just felt like it was a really, as a symbol or a gesture to the people of Evanston, that we understand everyone is struggling. I felt like that should have been a balanced budget this year, and that did not increase taxes.
Mhm. Mhm. What are your plans for, because it appears that COVID-19, there's a new strand
Yeah,
coming about, and it looks like we're going to be in quarantine well into the summer.
right.
Um, Say you're elected mayor,
Mhm.
uh, what what will be your conversation with Erica Storley, with your fellow councilmen, in terms of the budget and this ever-ending pandemic that we're in?
Right. Well, we have a big responsibility because we're one of the communities who's also, we've got a health department that's also helping to distribute the vaccine. So while that process is ongoing, now we've got sort of this curveball with the new strain. The sooner we can get, our businesses open, and the sooner we can get kids back to school safely, and the sooner we can get, people out in the community able to shop, the better that's going to be for everyone. Certainly the new strain is a curveball, and now, this idea to be able to double mask, that really helps, that people should be doing that. Um, I think one of the things that we're seeing with COVID is the populations that it has disaffected, African American and elderly or older adults. Those oftentimes are the people that don't have resources to be on the internet or signing up for or learning about when they can even get their vaccines. So I think that we really need to be championing a really strong communications plan that I think the city doesn't always do a great job with, and that is my background, so maybe this is my bent on that, but I do feel like we need to be really helping these communities and helping them get the information that they can, so that everyone can, be vaccinated safely. And certainly with the new strain, we're getting new information every day, and I think that's put an additional burden certainly on the health department. I think that the city's done a pretty good job, actually, given the circumstances. I think that it's difficult and certainly unprecedented. And while people can complain, everyone can always complain about something. I do think that given, the circumstances, they've done a pretty good job. And I hope to be able to really help to enable anyone's, families to be able to get the best information in a timely manner, so that we're all able to be as healthy as we can be.
Mm, mm. What do you think of possibly getting vehicles out to the communities that aren't out getting the vaccine, uh,
Right.
and helping them get the vaccine right there in their community? Just
Yeah, well, this is sort of a like one of my philosophies is
right.
we need to be meeting the people where they are. Not everyone, especially now in this crazy snow and this weather, even if you were a healthy older adult, to even go outside of your house, you can run the risk of falling or whatever else, or maybe you don't have transportation. So I do think any efforts and initiatives, I think we've got a really strong community and people are willing to step up and help. I think that they need to be engaged and asked. And so again, I feel like we can really do a good job of helping each other, especially at this time. But again, to take these services out to where the people are, instead of expecting that people are going to be able to find this information and get to a location at a certain time, I think that's very difficult. So we should be trying to help in whatever way we can. And we've got resources right now that aren't being used, whether it's vehicles or paramedic, or we're opening up our firehouses. I just read that UC Berkeley or UC Davis, I guess, opened their dormitories, they opened their gym facilities. They were a partner in helping to house, COVID patients and in helping to distribute the vaccine. So when people ask about like Northwestern, there are ways that Northwestern can be contributing that isn't necessarily just dollars or taxes or whatever else. I think that as a community partner, we could be looking to them to help lead the way here too, knowing that their dormitories are empty. Like what could they be helping us to do even in the implementation of COVID vaccinations?
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea.
Right,
There's so many people who haven't in Evanston who haven't gotten the first shot yet.
right. And I think, I get text messages and it says, when you can sign up and what level and whatever, but I don't think that it's super straightforward. And I don't think that, for instance, we talked offline beforehand, my 85-year-old mother is not going, who's legally blind, is not going to be able to see a text message that she is eligible to sign up for her COVID shot. And even if she could, she wouldn't be able to get on the internet to do that. So I think that we really need to be, one of my clients is in the arena of this older adult. They do senior living. And so I really have a real understanding of that population. And so I see that as a real, a place that really needs some assistance. But also, our Black and Brown communities, if they don't have Wi-Fi or they don't have computers or they don't have, mobile devices where they can also be, online and signing up for these things. So once again, I just feel like better communication, more kind of community outreach, all of those things are certainly going to help us.
Okay, now you and Sebastian Knowles, your opponent,
Right.
who came together recently and issued a statement in regards to the very unfortunate another comment by Ann Rainey.
Right.
Yeah, I think someone said we've come to normalize her behavior. I don't think we've come to normalize it. Many of us have been quite upset over
Right.
things that she has said and done over the years.
Well, you and I certainly had an interesting incident with her in the past. So I think, if anyone understands this, we do. And I don't think it's normal behavior. And I certainly don't think it's normal behavior for an elected official in our town. So, and particularly in a public forum, I find it really wrong. And we both know that ultimately in that incident, while the ethics board said she should be censured, she actually cast the tie-breaking vote not to censure herself. So, our elected officials and our mayor didn't take it seriously then. And so if you condone bad behavior, then it will get repeated, and it has. So I think it's, it's very unfortunate, but it might be the last time. I spoke at council the other night. Sebastian and I both actually spoke at council even before we had issued the statement. And I said, I had been there in the past on a couple of occasions to support Devon and speak on his behalf, when they took away his FOIA responsibilities, and other times, when the mayor spoke so inappropriately to him. And I'd also spoken to say that Ann Rainey's behavior was awful. And I said it wouldn't be the first time that I had been speaking about those two things, but that I hoped it would be the last. And I really do hope it is the last. I hope that no one has to be subjected to that behavior, particularly by an elected official in our community. It's just wrong.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Board of Ethics, usually the mayor usually makes recommendations for the Board of Ethics. I don't quite understand. I understand the concept and why we have a Board of Ethics, but it doesn't seem to be effective. I mean, for her to be able to vote on herself, whether she's going to censure herself or not. And there have been many times when the Board of Ethics they can, would say, oh, this is out of our jurisdiction.
Right.
I mean, just it got to a point where I was like, well, why do we have one?
You're right. Well, and I think ultimately the Board of Ethics thought, why do we have one? Because they all quit. They made a recommendation to the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee disregarded it. In this instance, and like, not to take it back to me, I'm using that because this is sort of past history. But in this instance, we know how she spoke to an opponent who is also an elected official. And is a citizen in our community. And Sebastian reached out to me, and he had reached out to the BIS campaign as well, because he wanted us to issue a statement together in solidarity, just disagreeing and saying this is, to disavow this type of behavior and not to condone it. And before it was released, then the BIS campaign came out with its own statement. And so Sebastian and I went ahead with a joint statement, because I do believe this should have been said in solidarity. But even though, BIS said it was wrong, Ann Rainey right now is still on his website endorsing him. He hasn't rebuked it. He hasn't, it's what I find, you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. You either don't condone that and it's abhorrent to you and you take away the endorsement, or you accept it and you keep her up on your page and you go on about your business. But I don't think you get to have your cake and eat it too. I think what she did was wrong. I think Sebastian and I made a statement it was wrong. I think we both understood that. I think that the BIS campaign said it was wrong, but then kept her endorsement on their website. So I don't understand the thinking there. And I think that, it says something, to say, I don't believe that, and I don't think that should have happened. And yet still have the endorsement on his page. Makes no sense. And it's been, maybe it was an oversight, but it's been a while since she made the statement, and it's been a while since he made the statement. So I don't think that's right.
And another discussion came up since she made that statement in regards to reparations. Now, that was another heated topic from the mayoral debate,
Right.
Was reparations. This definitely appears to want to continue with the way it's being rolled out in terms of a housing program.
Right.
And you and Sebastian seem pretty much on the same page that we need to go back to the drawing board and really have more input from the community as to how they want to receive reparations. And with Ann Rainey being one of the leaders on the reparations subcommittee,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of people are starting to question what's actually happening with reparations, because she's had a pretty big influence on it. The cannabis tax dollars, I thought that was brilliant,
Right.
but she stayed in the mix of everything.
Right.
And, Robin went from one vision of reparations to all of a sudden it turned into something totally different, to a housing program where only a few people would benefit. So everyone's wondering, okay, well, how do we go from here to here? And now more and more people are starting to see who Ann Rainey is.
Right.
I mean, I will never take away from her. She is a badass. She's a smart woman, extremely smart,
Right.
With a lot of vision, and she knows how to get things done. And I always say, by hook or crook, she gets things done. The woman she's been an alderman for over 30 years for a reason. She knows the game. But at the same time, she has played dirty.
Well, I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to say someone's played dirty necessarily. I think probably she's done a number of good things over the years, but I question that she is really who we need right now. And I think that if, we know the behavior in the past, and I think she has absolutely crossed a line, and I don't think there's any turning back now. And so what we need now, we are leaders in the nation on reparations. And, Sebastian and I both said this in the forum. And I think that what Daniel Biss doesn't understand, because he hasn't really been involved in Evanston, is that the people of Evanston don't want the reparations program the way that it has been offered to them. And like so many things in Evanston, the city is going to push this forward, but it's so vitally important that we get it right, not just for ourselves, which is critically important, but also because we are leaders in the nation on this. And so we need to get it right, because other communities are going to be following our model. And you don't give reparations with strings attached. You don't give reparations and say you can put it into this. You give reparations, and the people who have been done the harm say thank you, and they get to decide where the money goes and how it is used. And otherwise, it is not true reparations in the national scope of what reparations are meant to be. And I think that's what Sebastian and I both said in our statements. And then Biss said, oh, well, he was happy with the way that the city was going to do it, where it was going to be an investing in housing, and because housing builds wealth and whatever else. We all understand that. But what true reparations are is different than what the city's offering right now. And if this is the way that we do it, then we're getting it wrong. And we're getting it wrong, not just for ourselves, but for the rest of the nation. And I think that we've got a really important role here. And I think Sebastian and I, if you listen to what we say repeatedly, because we've both been out in the community, and these are our roots, and this is where we've been, doing the work. It is to get the community's input first. And until we have that input, we shouldn't be moving forward with the program the way it is. I think it's along the lines of what I've seen, Biss do when he pushed forward the plan to try to gut the teachers' pensions. And he pushed it all the way to the Illinois State Supreme Court, where ultimately it was deemed unconstitutional. You don't just keep moving something forward if it's wrong. You need to take a step back, reevaluate, hear what the people are saying, and then take it from there. So I think that's where we are right now with reparations. I think we should all be really proud of that work. And Robin Ruth Simmons should be applauded for the work she's done. But I think we need to now, it's like surgical precision to get it right, because we are going to be the model.
Yes, Robin definitely secured the bag. She got the commitment for the 10 million, and she's been the only one in the country to turn it into a real conversation.
Right. And now there's also a program at Evanston Community Foundation for beyond the 10 million. There's more money. But as Kevin Brown says, it's reparations. It's not the United Way. And so we really need to be looking at what are reparations. This isn't just a charity. This is truly to repair harm. And so again, it's so vitally important to get it right. And not just think of it as another charity that we're all paying into or believing in. It really has to be really right.
Yeah, someone has said, well, there could possibly be 15 Black families in Evanston that will benefit from the first 400,000. And so, yeah, so it's not going to look too great if all 15 families can fit in one photo to say that they got reparations when you have a city full of Black people in Evanston. And so only the people in that picture.
Right.
And if it is not going to be a good look to start out, you're right.
No.
Most definitely.
Well, especially if we could be investing, they could be taking money and putting it into a Black-owned business. They could be, giving scholarships to grandchildren or their own kids. They could be doing a lot of things that they choose to do with the money that is owed to them, versus put it into housing because the city wants to somehow develop the Fifth Ward or whatever that is really about. I just think it's wrong. And that is advancing the city's agenda. It's not advancing the people who have been harmed. And so that's why it's so important. I can't stress it enough.
Mm.
And I don't know if, you know, if Biss is saying what he's saying because the city's in his ear saying, this is what we want. And so he's trying to advance that, or if he really doesn't understand that this isn't what the people want. And, you know, it's not what Tina Payden and Renee Payden, when they put together a petition, you know, on change.org saying this isn't true reparations, like people in the community know that that's out there and they've read it and they understand it. And so I don't know if it's a disconnect or if it's like aligning with the city, but for, you know, for him to say that we were basically trying to derail reparations is, it's one thing for him to say it to a white woman, but for him to say it to Sebastian was absolutely wrong, because I don't think that he is missing the point on what reparations are supposed to be.
Mhm. We have quite a few people here on the Zoom. We're open for questions. If anyone has a question, feel free to send me a message in the chat that you have a question and I'll call on you, or you can use the raise your hand symbol and I'll call on you from there and then you'll unmute. Okay. All right. So, Lori, God, it's so much to, if you become mayor, there's so much that you have to do. So much. So we have affordable housing.
We're gonna have so much fun doing it, Malika.
So you have affordable housing. So, you know, there's money there for affordable housing. What are your thoughts on Mary Rosinski? She's running for 7th Ward, right? So Mary's a longtime successful realtor. She knows the lay of the land of Evanston. And she had a great idea. She said, well, why are we trying to get all these developers in for affordable housing? There's plenty of property just right here that we can turn into affordable housing.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Mary's a friend of mine, and we've been shoulder to shoulder fighting the good fight for a long time in this community for transparency and better accountability. So I love her, and I think she's, you know, worked hard in many initiatives that I've been involved in. And so when Mary says things, I listen. I think that affordable housing, you know, we've got money sitting in an account right now. I do feel like the city's become sort of this one trick pony of they can only figure out one way to, you know, they think they're doing affordable housing with giving away kind of luxury developers, you know, high rises, and then they set aside these little micro units that families can't actually live in. So what we should be doing, and I spoke with a young woman who, she and her fiance moved up from the city. She lives in the 8th Ward. She's an architect. We met her at early voting in November. She's really interested in affordable housing. And so I sort of set her on this project, and she came back with all these sort of cool ideas about ways that other communities are doing it. I also attended an anti-racist workshop over Martin Luther King weekend, and my breakout session was in affordable housing. And I worked with a woman who I've known here. She was part of a group that was defending Kevin Brown when he was being fired. Gail Schechter is her name. And she is like, I would make her our affordable housing czar. She knows about this. She's been doing it for, you know, decades. And she has helped to implement these programs, including helping Northbrook rewrite their affordable housing ordinance. And our affordable housing doesn't have an inclusionary housing ordinance. It isn't working right now for the Evanston residents. And we need to, across the board, start prioritizing Evanston residents so that, you know, even helping them fill out the forms, whatever it might be. But to go back to like the Payden sisters, for instance, who own, I don't know how many properties in town and have been doing affordable housing organically, again, for generations. You know, their mother was a former alderman in town. Could we, and this is one of the ideas from this young woman, she said, you know, we could be taking some of that money, sort of along the lines of what Mary Rosinski was saying. Could we take some of the money from the Affordable Housing Fund, which exists right now? And what tends to happen is developers pay into the fund rather than provide affordable housing, because it's, I think, cheaper for them, because then they'll turn a bigger profit with the units if they aren't affordable housing. So they tend to pay into this fund. So there's this pool of money. Could we use like the Payden sisters units, for example, or any, we've got existing housing stock that falls below the affordable housing threshold. Could we work with those landlords and take some of the money from this fund and maybe upgrade those units so that we would apply, or, you know, maybe they would have stainless appliances or just have upgrades. So, you know, thermal windows, more energy efficient, you know, whatever it might be, that are true affordable housing units, where it might be 2 and 3 bedrooms that a family can stay in Evanston because they can afford the rent, and they can be living in a nice unit with their kids, attending our schools and still shopping in our shops and buying groceries in town. So those are some of the things that I think that we just need much more creative thinking, and we need to really be looking for solutions. We can't just keep doing the same thing over and over and taking money from these developers and putting it in a fund that sits there when there are units in town where families could live and stay in town. Because, you know, a 500 square foot studio doesn't do a family of 3 or 4 any good, and doesn't afford them the ability to stay in the community.
Yes, I agree. I think that that's a great idea.
There was another, like Malincrot is an old convent in Wilmette, and part of that redevelopment, you know, through adaptive reuse, it's a historic building, and rather than bulldoze it, which is probably what Evanston would have done, they used it, adaptive reuse, turned it into housing, but a big portion of it is affordable housing units. So they kept this beautiful building and campus, and it became a place that, you know, both, you know, ethnic minorities who were maybe just able to stay in town, or teachers who maybe couldn't have otherwise afforded, you know, could buy a unit there. So there were ways that people were able to then live in this beautiful historic building in a pretty apartment that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. So I would love, you know, when we're doing these things in Evanston, for us to think creatively rather than get the bulldozers out and sell our land to developers who can only, you know, go to 17 stories high.
Right. We have a question from Kimberly Frazier.
Mhm.
Kimberly?
Hi, Lori.
Hi, Kimberly.
I wanted to ask a part 1 and a part 2 of 2 questions. Why do you believe the work with Black residents is important, and why should it be encouraged? And I had another question, was in regard to Black youth. I understand that you work with a Black organization in Evanston, and can you give examples of what type of activities you did with that organization, and why did you think that they were beneficial to the Evanston youth community?
Well, full disclosure, Kimberly and I worked in that organization together, and I believe it's important to again be with the community and listen to the voices of the community, wherever and however they want to be working with us. And in the various initiatives that I've been involved in town, we've gotten support across the community in every ward. And I think that, you know, you can't just stay in your own neighborhood and be listening to the voices of the people who are, you know, immediately surrounding you. And in the case of the organization that Kimberly's talking about, it was the DJ Coleman Foundation. And DJ was he was actually the Justin Wynn Award winner at Kingsley School. He was a classmate and friend of my daughter's. He was killed 2 weeks into his freshman year. And it was devastating to the community. And the ways that we got involved then was through the DJ Coleman Foundation, was to do not just fundraising, but to do a weekend where it was Day World, because he was called Day. And we brought, you know, positive influence and activities and enrichment and education, and did that for several years together with this group of women who really just came together over a tragedy. And Tiff Rice, who DJ's mom, was, you know, she reached out to the community for support, and the city they didn't really try to help. And so this group of women, group of moms essentially came together and started this organization, and we provided then scholarships. Scholarships were part of it, but really to provide support to uplift the youth in Evanston. And the scholarships always went to 2 freshmen, because Day was a freshman when he was shot and killed. And for sort of secondary education, so that, kids would then have their eye on the prize and know they had some money in the bank and could be, advancing their education down the road. So those are that, and I use that, and Kimberly knows this and Tiff knows this, and I think they're maybe both on the call, but that was really one of the most enriching and wonderful experiences that I've had in town. And it was amazing to be able to sort of escape my paradigm and really work within a community that I hadn't previously been involved in officially as an organization. So it was really a great experience, and I'm proud to not just have worked alongside these women, but to call them my friends and to still be in touch with them. And they are still, beside me and helping my campaign and really kind of working through some of the issues that maybe I wouldn't have as much insight into. So, I'm proud to be aligned with those women, and I'm proud to call them my friends, and to be really still in communication with them when working on things together.
Okay, thank you for the question, Kimberly. We have a question from Jane W.
Hi, I'm not sure if I got my iPad, but I'll do the best I can. I want to get us back to affordable housing, especially for seniors.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a task force appointed by Mayor Tisdale way back when, and we worked on gathering information for not only affordable housing for seniors, but supportive living for people that can't afford to live at the Mather and some of these other nice places, but more lower to middle income type people that might need more help and want to stay in Evanston.
Right.
A lot of people moved to the North Shore Hotel, and then it was converted into the Marion, and a lot of people had to leave Evanston and move down into Chicago. So
Right.
we would like to try to avoid that.
Right.
There's a lot of different definitions of affordable housing out there, I guess. And when I see these apartments go up and the AMIs are 60, 80, 100, and 120%, that doesn't work for most people.
Right. Especially,
it has to be 30 or 50% to really be able to afford based on people's incomes.
right. Well, because I do work in this arena for senior living, I probably know more about this than I even care to admit. And then this idea of the missing middle, and when people are saying the AMI, it's the area mean income. And so if it's like 60 to 80%, that means that is what your income is. And this primarily disaffects older adults because they are on a fixed income. And so there isn't the promise of something down the road. In speaking to a number of these communities in the Evanston area, and we've got, a number of senior living providers here, and several have gone up recently as well. And one just got passed at Sherman and Evanston, or Sherman and Emerson.
Yeah, that's not the first one that was really going to be affordable, I think.
Right. It was going to be. It was billed as going to be 70% affordable and 30% luxury. And somewhere between the time they proposed it and the time it passed city council, it flip-flopped. And so now it's 30% affordable. And not only is it then not going to be affordable for Evanston residents, but it also disaffects the seniors living in the building which is adjacent to it, because they're going to take over their parking lot. And so now these older adults are going to have to park down the block in a parking garage and carry their groceries in the winter through 1.5 feet of snow like we have now. I was speaking with a group at Avador, which is one of the newer communities in town, and a woman who she's there, and she is in an affordable unit. She's able to live there because it is an affordable housing unit. Because this is, you know, a consideration and an area of interest for me, I don't know what the answer is right now. I'm not going to try to pretend to know the answer right now, but it is a concern, and it is certainly something that I will be looking into, because I don't think that, you know, we can just be pricing people out of town, you know, either young, old. I mean, when we're talking about our diversity, it's all of our diversity, and that enriches our community. And I think that we need to be really looking at that very carefully about how we're going to do that.
Jane, you're still talking. You're muted. Hold on. Jane, you have to unmute. Okay. Okay, well,
Okay,
got it.
sorry about that.
It's all right.
I think when you muted me, I couldn't unmute myself, so. Anyway, there were a couple plans. We found out when we started working that there was a plan put to the city back in 2009. And then our plan went to them, I think in 2016 or 17. And as far as we know, it got put on the shelf along with the other one. Nothing was ever done with it. And we spent, you know, years working on it. And Mayor Haggerty appoints another whole steering committee to do basically the same thing that our whole task team did for 5 years. So it gets very frustrating when people have done all this work and nothing ever happens to it. So I hope somebody pays attention to it sometime.
Well, and Jane, unfortunately, your experience has been the experience of so many people. You know, I've heard the same story from the people that worked on the CARP plan, the Climate Action Resilience Plan. I think that, you know, we're asking people, so the voice of people over time has just kind of gotten diminished. And whether that is, you know, at citizen comment or on our boards and commissions, you know, we're asking people to come out and use their brains and their time and all of their energy, and they put together a really, you know, maybe it's not a perfect plan, but it's certainly a start. And then it sits in a drawer, and that's wrong. And so I would really work to dust those things off, to bring some of the people back who spent the time and energy, if they're still interested in being involved, and to try to, you know, get these things into effect. I say this often, and I hate to, I don't want to sound negative, but I think that's part of the problem with Evanston, is that we say these great things that we're going to do this, you know, we have a plastic bag ban, or we have a leaf blower ordinance, or whatever we have, but then nobody enforces it. Or we have a, you know, a plan for affordable housing for seniors, and then that's not, you know, enforced, or that's not implemented. The CARP plan, and that's not implemented. And this is actually the third iteration of the CARP plan, so the Climate Action Plan. So, you know, there isn't time to just have these things sit in a drawer. And I think it's, you know, I often say that the people I've worked with and volunteered with in town could run a small nation. And there are probably many of the people that you volunteered with on that commission. And I think it's a shame to waste their time. I think that our community needs to be run more like a, you know, professional organization, where if we're asking people to do the work, then we need to follow through on the suggestions that they're making, or say why we're not. But we can't just keep asking them to do the work and then put it in a drawer and not implement the work.
I agree. Citizens got to be heard.
Yeah. Well, and in the case of that that building, you know, the building that was supposed to be 70% affordable and turned out to be 30%. The other thing about that is we are not prioritizing Evanston residents. And so, you know, even if it gets built, or like the Howe development in the second ward, even when they are building these things, it's not necessarily helping Evanston residents, because they are not prioritized on this waiting list to get into these units. So even when we build them, you know, to the detriment of the entire building next door of, you know, seniors that are going to have to then schlep their stuff down the block, it's not necessarily helping Evanston residents who live here now. So forever building things and sort of decimating the character of our downtown and, you know, pricing small business owners out of town. But none of it is benefiting Evanston residents. We should be working on projects that are benefiting the people who live here now, and they should be prioritized in every aspect.
Well, thank you so much, Lori. We've
Thanks.
gone over.
Okay.
It's
As
okay.
I tend to do.
No, it's fine. You were saying some really good stuff there. Um, the primary, the early voting is going on. So if you want to let people know where you'll be, I'm sure you're up and out early in the mornings.
Yes, so early voting started on Monday, and people can go to the Civic Center and actually cast their ballot. Or if you want to go to our website, which is www.keenan4evanston.org, we have an entire page about early voting where you can get a mail-in ballot if that's safer for people to stay home, whether because of COVID or weather or whatever it might be. People can mail their ballot in. If you've got kids away at school, certainly you can ask them to do a mail-in ballot as well. It's an important election. I would ask you to please look at the challengers like Mary Rosinski in the 7th Ward. Please look at the numbers of people running. It says something to me that many of our sitting council, with the exception of one of the alderwomen who is running unopposed, are all being challenged, and that they have all endorsed my opponent. I think if we want status quo and we want things to stay the same and that we're happy with the way things are, then that's probably what you should do. But if not, then you can go to keenan4evanston.org, find out more about what we're about. I've been working in Evanston as a volunteer for 22 years. I know the people. We're a complex and very nuanced community. And I think that it's going to take someone who's been doing the work in town and has really been able to affect a change historically in the various ways that I've been involved. So I'd love to be able to do that as mayor. Certainly remember, primary February 23rd. The general election is April 6th, unless someone gets 50% of the vote on the 23rd. If someone gets 50% of the vote plus one vote on February 23rd, they will be the new mayor. So I cannot stress enough how much your one vote matters. So please tell your friends, learn more about me if they're interested. I do not have $100,000 to be buying direct mail pieces and glutting your mailbox. My husband reminded me the last time I raised $100,000 in town, I gave it to the library or to the city to keep 2 libraries open. So it's not that I can't raise the money. It's just that I don't think that we should be spending that sort of money on a municipal election. I'm really looking for grassroots interest and the people of Evanston to get behind the vote this time. So thank you so much, everybody, and especially Malika and everyone with their questions. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, thank you so much, Lori. And one more time where they can contact you if they have questions before they head out to the polls. Sure.
So a lot of the information has been covered in the forum, so keenan4evanston.org. But if you send an email to info@keenan4evanston.org, it will get to me. And if you have a specific question or want to have a conversation, I am happy to do that. It's what I've always done in town. I am a person. I am not a politician, and I'm interested in hearing from people. So by all means, certainly shoot me an email if you have a question or you want to learn more. I'm happy to talk to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Lori.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you to everyone who joined us this evening, everyone in the Zoom. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your questions. Thank you to everyone watching on Evanston Live, Facebook Live. You all please stay engaged, get as much information about the candidates as you possibly can, get your questions answered, because you do not want to be or continue to be that resident who steps out the door and realize some changes have taken place and you had no idea. You had no idea of what was happening. So stay engaged, please stay engaged. Hi, Heidi.
I know, I was going to say hi, Heidi, too.
Hi, everybody.
Heidi, okay, well, we've ended, but.
And Michael.
And my,
Hi, Lori.
How are you? Nice to
Well,
see you.
how are you?
Good.
And good luck. You have our
Thank-
support,
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
no doubt.
Okay.
Okay, so everyone have a good night. Please stay safe. And again, stay engaged. Our next forum is the City Clerk Forum, February 16th at 7 p.m. right here on Evanston Live TV. And we have more amazing candidates coming up, individual interviews. So stay tuned.
Thanks, Malika.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.